And welcome back to the show. And joining us today is Bob Moriarty of 321gold.com. Bob, how you doing?
Well, I'm doing pretty good, but before we get serious, we need to talk about two things.
Let's
Okay,
go.
do you
Let's hear it.
remember when I said that Iran could close the Strait of Hormuz with 15 Girl Scouts?
You do.
Okay, I want to apologize. Okay, it's only fair for me to admit I was wrong, and I was patently wrong, and I got it just absolutely not even close. It was not 15, it was 12.
I had a feeling you were going to say that.
We need to, what we're trying to do is provide topical information to your viewers. And we've been doing this every 2 or 3 weeks or so. And given the news cycle, we need to change that to a more appropriate schedule. So instead of doing an interview every 3 weeks, we need to do 3 interviews a day.
That's how much things are moving. Yeah, I mean, I'm even finding myself. I'm realizing when I shoot these episodes, I need to just start getting them out quicker because things are changing quite a bit. And I I took down a bunch of notes here as it relates to our conversation today, and so I'm excited. I'm looking forward. Thanks for making the time as you always do. You're generous with your time. You want to start off giving your kind of macro overview, your latest thoughts since the last time we spoke?
Well, strangely enough, I want to bring you and your viewers up to speed. There is so much that is changing so quickly, and there is so much bad information coming out that literally it's going to be very hard to figure out what the actual story is. Now, have I ever discussed with you why people who are in combat don't talk about it?
Yes, you brought that up, and I'm recollecting here what you commented on as it relates to that. Oh yeah, because there'd be basically a big, you know what, measuring contest with people, and he goes,
It has to be within your frame of reference. Now, you and I could talk because you were in the service and I was in the service, and there's a lot of commonality. Now, the closer people are in experiences, the easier it is to communicate. But what's happening right now is very difficult to understand because it's not within the framework of people's experiences. And I think the best analogy for that is, how would you explain the color purple to a blind person? And frankly, I couldn't possibly answer that question. I don't think you could, because you have nothing in common where both of you understand the rules, the same thing. And that is exactly what's happening. Now, I have listened to people that I have some respect for, and they've got it absolutely dead wrong. And I'm absolutely astonished that so few people can actually see what's going on. So I'm going to tell all the viewers this can be very difficult for people to understand because we're off the edge of the chart. We've never been here before. This is the greatest energy crisis in world history. It is what I've been predicting for years, the collapse of the Western debt based system. But it's going to be very hard to understand. And there's so much stuff happening on a day to day basis that it's literally hard to keep up with. Do you know what's going on with Russia and Cuba?
I'm not intimately familiar with that. Please enlighten me.
Yeah, strange enough, and I'm glad you admitted this because a lot of this it's confusing. The United States, for some reason, has decided to put an embargo on fuel going to Cuba. So Cubans had no fuel since January. And as of this week, they have total island-wide electric blackout. So they have some intermittent power, but basically no gas, no diesel, no fuel for farming. And it is a severe crisis. So Russia is sending 2 tankers of gasoline and oil to Cuba. And that gets very interesting because it's similar to what the United States is doing. So, what exactly is going to be the American reaction? And frankly, I don't know. I am seeing things that scare the pants off me. That's one of them. And I think that Russia and China are sucking Donald into a trap, and they're going to mousetrap him. Now, what would be the equivalent of the United States embargoing Cuba? Who could embargo another island?
I mean, what, like I'm thinking like China, Japan, or
China and Taiwan.
excuse me, Taiwan. Excuse me, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got this situation where we have an embargo in place against Cuba, which happens to be totally illegal. And frankly, we've had sanctions in place against Cuba for 59 years. You know, why Donald Trump has decided they're the enemy all of a sudden, it's just simply beyond me. But while he is embargoing Cuba, he is also setting up some kind of international rule that if you're big enough, you can embargo somebody you don't like. And China went real quiet with Taiwan. And for a 10-day or 2-week period, they were not sending ships over. They were not flying aircraft around. It was very quiet. And then all of a sudden, in the last day or two, they started putting ships around Taiwan and flying aircraft into their zone. So, interesting situation. And I think the Russians and the Chinese are setting the U.S. up. That could get real interesting real quick. Now, if the United States cannot defend Israel or Qatar or Kuwait or Saudi Arabia, how the hell are they going to defend Taiwan? And the answer is they don't. And there's another issue that's even more important. What is the most important commodity that Taiwan produces? What do they have pretty much a lock on that's really important to the world economy?
The semiconductors.
Semiconductors. You need helium to produce semiconductors. Guess where 30% of the world's helium comes from?
I mean, a good chunk is obviously from Taiwan, and I know the current situation in the Middle East is going to.
No. It doesn't come from Taiwan. It goes to Taiwan. But where does it come from?
The Middle East.
Qatar, who just shut down their LNG plant, and the damage that has already been done to their facility is going to take 3 to 5 years to fix. So there are things going on that are literally catastrophic. And I believe that this is a David and Goliath situation where David understands his weapons and Goliath doesn't. It certainly appears to me, and I would be interested in your opinion because you've got a military background. I think Israel and the United States went into this war with Plan A, which was regime change, but no Plan B, no Plan C, no Plan D. And when Plan A didn't work, they threw their hands up in the air. Now they have no clue whatsoever. Now, I can prove to you Donald Trump has sense of humor. Would you like me to do that?
Sure.
Okay. What country has free passage through the Strait of Hormuz? What country can have oil shipped to them now?
I'm assuming countries aligned with Iran, like China, Russia, etc.
China. Okay. Who did Donald Trump just ask to help open the Strait of Hormuz? That would be China. So there are 10,000 comedians in Washington, D.C. who need to look for a job because there's a new comedian in town. Him asking China for support in opening the Strait of Hormuz is an absolute hoot. But what I enjoyed even more was when he demanded NATO help open the Strait of Hormuz. And for the first time in history, everyone in NATO stood in line to tell him to screw himself and the horse he rode in on.
And now he's I was before coming on the show here with you, I saw an article about Trump weighing in, winding down war as Pentagon sends 2,500 California Marines to the Mideast. Then they want 200 billion for the Iran war from Hegseth. They're sending warships, of course, 3 of them. So yeah, I don't see this winding down.
Well, he's sending about 10,000 Marines. Okay. He's sending Marines for the 1st Marine Division. He has 3 or 4 amphibious carriers on the way. And of course, Donald Trump lies about everything. So he'll say, no, we're not really planning on a ground invasion. We're not going to do that. I just want all the pieces in play. Well, Donald Trump's absolutely incapable of telling the truth. And if he's sending over 10,000 Marines, he's planning on landing them. Now, one of the mistakes that commentators are making is they're trying to say what they think is going to happen. And I think that's a mistake. I think they got it absolutely reversed. What they should actually be talking about is what it's not going to happen. Now, would you like me to tell you what it's not going to happen with those
Sure.
ground troops?
Sure.
They are not going to land unopposed. They are going to be slaughtered. It would be worse than Custer's last stand. Those islands that he's talking about invading are within artillery range and certainly drone range and certainly ballistic missile range. And they're going to have Iranians all over the island. Should a battalion commander or regimental commander manage to land on the island and set up his headquarters, there will be a ballistic missile coming through the roof in about 5 minutes. There is no way the United States is going to have a successful ground invasion of any part of Iran. Now, I don't think I've ever discussed this with you, but I took the last private plane into Iran in December of 1978. The Shah left in February of 1979. And I was taking a Fokker F-227 to the Shah's twin sister, who operated a commuter airline between Tehran and Abadan. It is an incredibly mountainous country. It's twice the size of Texas. And the idea of landing 10,000 Marines and actually accomplishing something, it's simply absurd. You're too young to remember this, but in April of 1965, the Marines landed on the beach in Da Nang, and there were 6,500 Marines. And the guys that I went through boot camp with were in the battalion that landed, but it was totally unopposed, so it wasn't a particular issue. But of the guys that I went through boot camp with who landed in Da Nang in 1965, a year later, half of them were dead or wounded. So the idea that we have the ability to land ground troops in Iran and actually accomplish something militarily. Ain't going to happen. And likewise, we're not going to open the Strait of Hormuz. You can take every ship in the NATO Navy and the United States and Israel, you're not going to open the Strait of Hormuz. It took a dozen Girl Scouts to close it, and you add another 20 or 30 Girl Scouts, they would be knocking off destroyers left and right. So there's a lot of bad information coming out, but what people should be understanding is this is catastrophic. Japan is running short of gas. New South Wales and Australia, 107 gas stations are out of diesel. If we go to April 1st and the strait is still closed, and I cannot imagine that it would be open, it is going to be catastrophic. And you're going to be looking at fuel costs 2 or 3 or 4 times higher than what it is right now.
Yeah, well, I've been hearing over in Asia there's been rationing going on.
Well, strange enough, and I didn't realize, and that's kind of interesting to me, we have informal rationing here that hadn't occurred to me. Now, everybody in France uses credit cards and checks. They use very low cash. So I go to the fuel station to fill up my vehicle. I had half a tank, and I thought I should buy it while it's still cheap. So I go to fill up the car. I put my credit card in, and it comes back and it says you're limited to €100 charge. But the problem is fuel has gone to €2 per liter. So what the credit card company is saying is you were limited to €50, which is about 13 gallons. So it's a unofficial form of rationing, but you're absolutely going to see it. The Australians and the English are telling people slow down, stop driving unless it's absolutely necessary. This is a order of magnitude worse than 1973. And in 1973, the price of a barrel of oil went from $3 a barrel to $12 a barrel. And it used to take an hour or 2 hours sitting in line to get fueled up. What's amazing to me is Europeans are just starting to notice. For the first time, I saw people in line at the fuel station today, and that could be because it's weekend. But this is bad, and every single day that goes on, it gets slightly worse. Do you understand Israel's position? What is Israel's desire? What do they want? Why did they start this war?
Well, I think it ties in with a number of things. I think first you have a cabal that is they've got their own occult beliefs, and I think that's kind of driving the ship. And they want to obviously have this greater Israel project, from what I'm gathering. And I think Netanyahu had mentioned also about having it where the gas or the fuel is going through Israel instead of having to go through, I don't know if it was Saudi Arabia. So there's a resource purpose there, but I think it's part of this Pax Judaica sort of a expansionist thing.
Well, be more specific. What do they want to do to Iran?
I mean, I presume, yeah, do like regime change and have hegemony over it, completely control it.
Nope. They want to destroy Iran. Now, they turned Libya into a failed state. They turned Iraq into a failed state. They turned Lebanon into a failed state. They turned Syria into a failed state. They turned Sudan into a failed state. They turned Somalia into a failed state. They do not want to turn Iran into a failed state. They want to destroy it. The problem is the Iranians and the Egyptians are the two oldest countries in the world. The Iranians have seen this movie before. They got no particular issue with it. They understood that it was critical for them, and they are going to defend their country to the death. And what's interesting, and I'll be absolutely candid unless I'm missing something, Israel and the United States have no plan. They have no clue whatsoever as to what they're doing. And the Iranians absolutely do. The supreme leader set himself up and his entire staff to be murdered by Israel because they knew the United States and Israel would do that. And he was 86 years old. You know, his doctor had told him, whatever you do in the next week, don't buy any green bananas. But he said, okay, I'm going to accept martyrdom. And that's exactly what he did. 30 minutes after he was killed, the first ballistic missile was fired at Israel. The Iranians knew what was going to happen. They were prepared and they responded immediately. And I think we talked about this last time from a military point of view. Why do you not kill the leader of the country that you're attacking?
Well, you're going to engender generations of reprisals.
Yeah, you need somebody to surrender. Okay. If you're going to whip somebody, you need somebody who could sign those surrender documents. Now, if you kill all the people that you're negotiating with, who are you going to get sign the surrender documents? There isn't anybody left. Somebody set up 31 different, I don't know what you'd call them, not provinces, but units, 31 pieces of Iran. And every single piece is totally independent of the other pieces. And they were given targets and they were given ballistic missiles and drones and said, okay, as soon as we get hit, take your Bic lighter and start lighting off ballistic missiles. And that's exactly what they did. The Iranians have been incredibly organized and efficient, and they know what's going on. And the strange thing is, they keep saying, look, here's the deal. Whatever you do not want to hit our oil facilities, because if you hit our oil facilities, we not only are going to hit your oil facilities, we're going to hit every American base in your country. And that's exactly what they did. So Israel gets cute and they fire some missiles into Far's not oil field, natural gas field, the biggest natural gas field in the world, shared with Qatar. And Iran said, okay, watch this. So they have taken out the Israeli refineries. If the United States and Israel continue to escalate, it will result probably in atomic weapons being used. And at the end of the day, there will be an unconditional surrender, but it will be the United States and Israel issuing unconditional surrender. If you had nuclear weapons, which country would you rather attack? A country the size of Israel or a country the size of Iran?
I'm assuming Israel. I mean, given the size, it's
Stop, stop. It's the size of New Jersey, and it's target rich. Now, if you want to compare that to Iran, Iran's twice the size of Texas. What do you hit? Okay. So Israel and the United States have the ability to murder millions of people. They just do not have the ability to win the war. And Donald Trump's very funny, said, I'm not going to play anymore. I'm going to take my ball at baseball, my bat and my ball, and run home. Excuse me, Donald. Your only experience with the military was in high school, ROTC. You know nothing about the military. Anybody who's been in the military, and especially somebody who's been in combat, understands whatever you vote for the enemy gets a vote too. And the Iranians are just going to wait to Donald and say, bye bye, Donald. Okay, why you're en route, take all your troops with you too, because if you don't, we're going to kill them. And they will. And the strange thing is, the United States keeps lying about what they've accomplished. They've accomplished very little. They've killed a few thousand people. They've taken out a lot of facilities, but it's nothing. We had 550,000 troops in Vietnam, and we were attacking a country, North Vietnam, that had somewhere between 17 and 20 million. And we were there for 20 years and we lost the war. Donald Trump thinks he's going to win against Iran in a week or two or a month or 6. No, not a chance. And he could say, well, I'm not going to play anymore. And Iran's going to say, we don't give a shit. We're going to keep playing.
Yeah, I think it's gonna. This is not going to be wrapped up anytime soon. I think it's going to go for a while. You also mentioned, I mean, apart from even the military, U.S. forces getting targeted, I'm also seeing articles about tourist sites being potentially threatened because of this conflict.
Well, Dubai, okay. Uh, I don't know what Dubai's total population is, but only 15% are locals. 85% are expats. Dubai was the big center of aviation and tourism in the Middle East. Who's going to go to Dubai now? Okay. So, interesting situation. Now, would you like to hear a list of all the problems?
Sure.
Okay. There's 3,200 ships that are stuck in the Strait of Hormuz. Let's presume there's 10 people on each ship. So you got 32,000 people. Now, guess who's running out of food and water?
I'm assuming those people.
Yeah, 32,000 people. So what are the alternatives? Well, they could ask Qatar or Oman or UAE or Saudi Arabia if they could land and pick up some food and water. They've done that. And everybody said, take a hike. You're on a ship. You got 9 other people. You run totally out of food. You run totally out of water. What do you do?
Desperate times call for desperate measures, I guess.
No, serious question. Pretend you're on a ship. You're a crewman. You run totally out of water, totally out of food. What do you do?
You tell me, what do you do?
No, it's a serious question. If you
Yeah.
will pretend you're a crewman on a ship,
Yeah.
you run out of water, you run out of food, and they won't let you bring the ship in to get food and water. What do? You're going to
Well, I
do
guess
something.
you make a run for it. You try and sail out of the area there if you think you're going to die.
No. You're not going to sail out. You're going to get blown up. Remember those life rafts?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Every ship's got to have life rafts. Okay. Nighttime comes, no moon. Okay. You drop the life raft into the water, get your oar, and you start rowing. Okay. And you just leave the ship. Now, what do you suppose happens when 3,200 ships are floating around and nobody's on board? Can you spell utter disaster environmentally? There are things going on. There's no helium coming out of the Middle East. It's 30% of the world's supply. There's no food going into the 6 GCC countries. Saudi Arabia has a pipeline that goes from East Saudi Arabia to West Saudi Arabia, and they can pump 6.5 million barrels a day, which would be a substantial amount of oil through the pipeline. Okay, remember the Houthis?
Mm-hmm.
Saudi Arabia is at the north end of the Red Sea. The Houthis are at the south end. Now, they've got 12 Girl Scouts with 4 BB guns, 2 bows and arrows, and a couple of slingshots. And when those Saudi tankers come floating down the Red Sea, guess what they're going to do? They're going to blow them up. Okay. So, no helium, no food going into the GCC. The American air bases all over the Middle East, including Diego Garcia. Were you aware of that? There were
Yes, I saw that.
missiles, ballistic missiles. Nobody even knew. That's 4,000 kilometers from Iran. Nobody even knew they had 4,000 kilometer range, but they do. Okay, they haven't gotten through yet, but they wanted to fire a couple missiles just to put everybody on notice. Hey, look what we can do. Wow. Okay. Now the Brits have turned around and said, okay, we will allow Diego Garcia to be used as a staging area for American aircraft to resupply. Guess what the Iranians said?
What did they say?
No problem. No problemo. Actually, I'm not sure that's Farsi, but it sounds Farsi. Uh, if you do, that will make you a potential target. It is an existential war from Iran. They are not going down and rolling over. Why will there never be a ceasefire?
Just because of the whole history of the dynamics of it.
Nah. Okay. When the Ukrainians did ceasefires with the Russians, what did the Ukrainians do? They violated the ceasefire 7 times in a row. Okay. When the United States negotiates, okay, what do? Well, they do a sneak attack. When there were ceasefires in Ukraine, the United States and NATO resupplied Ukraine. So the Russians, hell will freeze over before the Russians ever agree to ceasefire. And exactly the same thing is true in the Middle East. When this war is concluded, no matter how it's concluded, the military schools in the world are going to use this as a case study, because what Iran is doing is simply brilliant. They are a small country of 92 million people surrounded by a bunch of people who don't like Shiite Muslims. And they got an enemy that wants to destroy them. And then the enemy has a country led by a president who can be blackmailed. And I'll tell you exactly how Israel dragged the United States in. They either bribed Trump or they blackmailed him. I suspect that when Bibi Netanyahu went to the White House on February 11th, he said, Donald, Jeffrey Epstein had 10,000 tapes of stuff that went on in the place. And it's not just a coincidence that your name was mentioned 38,000 times. So here's the deal. You either go to war with Iran or we start putting videos on YouTube. He was blackmailed into this. It's beyond stupid. So let's talk about the new name for this operation. Do you realize Donald Trump has changed the name of the operation?
What did he change it from? I know it was. Go ahead.
Fury.
Yeah.
It's now Epstein Fury.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Now there was a interesting revelation. There were some Epstein files released this week. Remember Jeffrey Epstein? Remember the suicide? Wasn't suicide. They switched him. They took him out in the middle of the night. And that's why none of the stories make any sense whatsoever. One of the prison guards put out a tweet the next day and said, oh, by the way, Jeffrey Epstein's just fine. And they flipped him in the middle of the night, brought in a body. when you look at the picture of them taking the body out on the cart, the nose is not the same as Jeffrey Epstein's nose. Okay, so one of two situations exist. Either they switch the nose or they switch the whole body. But I have seen videos. I said months ago Jeffrey Epstein was still alive in Israel. And he said, we've got the goods on Donald Trump. And if he doesn't do exactly what we tell him to do, we'll kill him. So interesting situation. This is turning into a lot bigger deal than anybody actually anticipated. And it's going to get worse every single day.
No doubt. Well, I'll also comment on. I keep hearing more. Michael Yon's been making posts. He's been actually just today. He posted something about a previous post somebody did back in 2023 regarding at least 50 fertilizer production facilities having been closed in Europe, not to mention perhaps other parts of the world. And I presume these shortages are sure to be headed our way, along with some false flag events.
I would not at all be surprised. Uh, the United States and Israel are now in the position they cannot act, they can only react. They weren't prepared. They made a mistake. They underestimated what was going to happen in Iran. I mean, face it, you had two blithering idiots doing the negotiating for the United States, Witkoff and Donald Trump's son-in-law. They're idiots. What are you going to do? You get a real estate broker negotiate a peace process? Are you kidding? So interesting situation. It's going to continue to get worse. Now, would you like some good news about the economy?
Yeah.
The bond market just blew up. The 30-year bond is spitting distance of 5%. Once it goes over 5%, yank the rug right out from underneath the stock market. BlackRock, Blackstone, and half a dozen other private credit corporations are refusing redemptions. We have liquidity prices going on. The Japanese carry trade is blowing up. The U.S. bond market is blowing up. We have a perfect storm. And there is a reason you do not hand a loaded gun to a 5-year-old. And that's exactly what we've done. Yeah, we are literally in a perfect storm. There are so many time bombs that are exploding all over the place. Very, very few people are going to get this correct. I have seen more people more wrong commenting on what's going on, and very, very few people understand this correctly. This literally is a 500-year transition of the debt-based system of the West collapsing. I'm certain you're familiar with what Ray Dalio said about stage 6 of the collapse of an empire. Did you catch that?
I remember hearing about it a little bit, but that we are basically there was the message
Yeah,
I got.
he said we're in stage 6, and once you get to stage 6, and that's when everybody recognizes that the entire system is falling apart. The next thing that happens is sudden collapse, that it's a shock to everyone. I will say, and I'll tell you, I know I'm correct on this. What people see in the next month or two is going to be way outside their frame of reference. They're going to see things that they just simply cannot believe are possible. And most of it's going to be bad. It gives the world an opportunity for a reset. I would like to see Russia and China and the EU go to Israel and say, look, guys, you're running a cult. You're run by a bunch of people of sociopaths. You're nuclear armed. And if you get close to lighting one of those nuclear weapons, we are going to turn you into a 6-foot sheet of glass. It is literally that dangerous. There are rabbis in Israel today that are talking about the Messiah coming. And the Christian Zionists who happen to be in high power in the U.S. military are talking about Jesus Christ coming back. These people have lost it. Okay. Now, the Christian Zionists believe, okay, we rebuild the third temple, we blow up the Temple Mount, we rebuild the third temple, and Jesus Christ comes back to earth. And when Jesus Christ comes back to earth, all the good Christian Zionists get raptured up to heaven to watch soap operas all day with Jesus. Now, the problem with that, there's a big problem with that. The Jewish Zionists say, well, we're going to destroy the Temple Mount. We're going to rebuild the third temple. The Messiah is going to come back to earth, and everybody who's not Jewish gets to be turned into a slave. Now, some of this stuff, like the World Economic Forum saying in 2030, you will owe nothing and you will own nothing and you will live in a 15-minute city. That is exactly the definition of slavery. Okay. So you've got the Christian Zionists who say everybody who's not a Christian Zionist is going to get zapped. And you got the Jewish Zionists saying everybody who's not a Jewish Zionist is going to be a slave. You've got a slight conflict between those two. But going back to the Bible to start justifying your behavior, there's 789 religions in the world. Did you know that?
I think I remember you mentioning that before. Yeah, there's quite a bit.
789 individual religions in the world. Regardless of which one of the 789 religions that you believe in, you know your religion is the true religion. So you reject 788 religions, okay? You honor your religion, but you know the 788 religions are full of crap. The only difference between me and them is I reject 789 religions. They reject 788 religions.
Well, yeah, when you mix the religious fervor with the political, when you give them the political baton, that's a dangerous mix.
We have, strange enough, I don't think anybody's ever talked about it. Jews are not bad people. Jews are another religion. They have strange beliefs. So do the Mormons. So do the Catholics. So do the Protestants. So do the Buddhists. You don't have to agree with them. When you put a bunch of Jewish Zionists in one room, they go stupid. And the degree of corruption and just evil that is coming out of Israel today is nothing short of remarkable. Those do not represent Judaism. They represent Jewish Zionism. It is a secular belief, and basically, it's Jews. It's Jews being the chosen people, and we are superior to everyone else on earth, and we're going to take over the world, and we get to do whatever we want to. They are sick people. Okay. We need to change that because they are going to destroy the world. The Zionists actually support Armageddon, and Armageddon is the ultimate battle between good and evil. And quite bluntly, if you got the Zionists in the US on one team and everybody else in the world on the other team, nobody is going to suggest that the United States and the Zionists are the good guys. They are not the good guys. They are the bad guys. This was an illegal war. It was planned 40 years ago. It has nothing to do with an Iranian nuclear weapons program that we know doesn't exist. Wesley Clark talked about this in September of 2001 when he was shown a document saying the United States planned on attacking 7 countries in 5 years. This is a planned attack by Israel to support the Greater Israel program. It is evil, it is wrong, and it is going to be stopped. And luckily, Israel is committing suicide, and that's how it's going to be stopped.
Yeah, from what I've gathered, well, I'll just preface it, and I know a lot of people are aware of the civil unrest that is going on over in Israel. How a lot has been obfuscated, media wise, what's going on. I know there have been efforts to arrest Netanyahu and have that, and I'm sure you saw this was like 2 months ago. I shared this with somebody else. How one of the judges that was intending to prosecute Netanyahu was killed in a motorcycle accident. I don't know if you had caught that. That was like a few months ago. But I know there's a lot of unrest over there, and there is definitely that Chabad Lubavitch kind of supremacist element tied in with this Sabbatean Frankism that is at the helm, and they will kill other Jews who stand in their way. So anybody for that matter.
You're more familiar with religion across the board than most of the people I know. When do Jews sit Shiva for a week?
Just to preface, I'm not by any means a theologian, but to answer your question, I don't know.
When someone important to them dies, it is the 7-day mourning period. Benjamin Netanyahu's son just finished a 7-day Shiva. I believe Benjamin Netanyahu was killed in exactly the same way that Israel killed the supreme leader. And I think he was totally surprised.
So these videos depicting Netanyahu in recent times, these are AI fakes?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I would be surprised.
One of two situations exist. There was a period of about 2 weeks when there was nothing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there were some videos that were clearly AI, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there were some videos and some interviews that appeared to be possible. But here's the problem. If he's as healthy as he showed in those interviews and those meetings, where did he disappear to for 2 weeks? Why would he disappeared? The evidence actually shows there are indications of Benjamin Netanyahu and, for that matter, Ben-Gvir were killed in a similar attack to what Israel did to the supreme leader. I think Iran was so prepared. I think they did exactly the same thing to the Israeli leadership. And now, frankly, the Israeli leadership is totally, now what do we do? Did you watch any of the meetings of the military council? They had a table and had 5 or 6 people and a civilian in the middle and generals surrounding him. Did you happen to see any of those?
I may have seen clips, but enlighten me.
Okay. Yeah, well, all you would need is photograph but the videos are better. You can tell a lot about what a person is thinking just by how they act and how they look. Okay. I saw those videos and I'm watching the generals. I'm ignoring what's being said because, frankly, I don't care. And I'm paying attention to their behavior. And those were not guys who were happy. These were not guys thinking they were winning the war. They were guys who knew they were getting their ass kicked. And I think the United States is hiding hundreds of deaths of Americans. I think they're hiding thousands of wounded of American kids. I think there was you were Navy, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. What do you think about the mutiny on the Ford?
Not surprised. People, and I'll preface, and I'm sure this hasn't changed. The Navy, I would say, from what I've gathered, the Navy, the Army, and the Marine Corps. Certainly, I would say probably I can't speak for the other branches, but just from what I've gathered from interacting with other service members when I was in, morale isn't the greatest, especially in the enlisted world. I mean, I think most people. I just want to preface real quick here to the audience, especially who haven't been in that environment. If the American public was aware of how enlisted people are treated, you'd be floored. I mean, from living in a barracks that looks like it's literally a cinder block prison cell, like straight up, to the garbage food, to the way in which people are treated, like literally a straight up child. Granted, you get some characters in the enlisted community that need to be that need guidance. Uh, Morale wasn't the best, so I can only imagine if you mix that with people that are aware of what's going on, not Fox News or MSNBC, but they're on X, they're on other platforms, they're communicating, and they're aware that they are being sent at the behest of a foreign country to go fight. Yeah, there's gonna be issues. I'm not surprised.
I think there was an actual mutiny, and nobody mentions it, and it should be mentioned. The Gerald Ford was part of the operation against Venezuela, and they had been out of port and for probably 6 months or more. That was a long, long tour before they got dragged into the Middle East. So the morale would have been at an all-time low before they started sailing for the Persian Gulf. But they're certainly smart enough to understand that Iran has missiles, could absolutely take out the Ford. So one of the glitches, the Gerald Ford is the most expensive ship in world history, and the septic system design was taken from a hotel, and literally it was a vacuum system. You flushed and it sucked everything up. So if you want to screw up the system, all you got to do is put in a set of utilities or a couple of towels, and you could stop the system from working entirely. And I understand that there was a 45-minute wait just to go pee. So that was a problem. And then somebody said, hey, screwing up the septic system didn't work. We need something more than this. So somebody set a fire that took out the burst of 600 people, which forced the Navy into removing the Gerald Ford. That's the first time since Vietnam that I'm aware of that there was that kind of mutiny. And frankly, even in Vietnam, I don't remember there ever being a mutiny on a carrier before. Those are the elite troops in the Navy. So we've got so many bad things going on at the same time. And I want to remind your readers, Iran did not start this war. Iran was innocent. Iran was a sovereign nation operating under international law, doing things that were perfectly acceptable. And the mere fact that they don't like the Zionist invasion of Palestine, okay, there's lots of people who don't like that. But to be demonized and attacked for 40 years is simply absurd. And it was a mistake on the part of Israel, and it was a mistake on the part of the United States. And we're paying the price today. And the sooner there is unconditional surrender, the sooner we can have peace in the Middle East for the first time in 80 years. We're going to have regime change. We're going to have regime change in Israel. We're going to have regime change in the United States. And there's an excellent chance that there will be regime change across the board in the 6 countries of the GCC and NATO.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, I know Iran is wanting the Gulf states to basically purge U.S. bases and influence over there. So we'll see if they decide to do that or otherwise. I also wanted to mention I have I've spent considerable time in Orange County, California, and there's a strong Persian demographic down there, and I had somebody reach out to me. I consider her a friend, and and she's well intentioned, and I suspect that she consumes mainstream narratives, and she also has family over in Iran, and she sent me a long message. It was so long, it was like so many paragraphs. I was like, I don't want. It's like reading. I have to sit down and read this. So I read it, and she was just telling me how I'm wrong in my thinking, that we need to go in there, that they've been doing these horrible things to their people, et cetera. And I just, hey, look, I'm not dismissing the fact that the Iranian regime has done things to their people. I'm not a fan of them, nor am I a fan of really any of these governments at all. I think they're all controlled. It's theater. So I'll preface that. But getting involved over there is inviting dire consequences, not just for people in that area, but for the world, for that matter. And I told her that puts us closer towards some type of a major global conflict. And she sent another message that and this just goes to show the naivety. She was like, "What World War III? They're losing. We're going to do our thing." And I didn't even care to respond. But for the record, not a fan of any of these governments. But getting involved in that's a fool's errand. I don't agree with that at all.
Well, the strange thing is that not one American in 1,000 understands the sequence of events in Iran. What happened in 1953?
Oh, Mossadegh was overthrown
On behalf of British Petroleum by uh, Roosevelt's grandson. Okay. The CIA led a coup d'etat against the democratically elected government of Iran, and they installed their puppet, the Shah. Every single Iranian knows that. Now, the Shah was a thug, and he was incredibly brutal, and anybody that he didn't like, he'd just kill. And the people revolted against that, and the only cohesive leadership was from the radical Muslims. Okay. So there were not radical Muslims who took over the country because they felt like taking it over. There were radical Muslims who took over in response to the United States propping up this thug running the country from 1953 until 1979. We caused the problem. And the strange thing is, if we hadn't put sanctions on Iran, if we had left Iran alone to determine their own future, they wouldn't have put up with the mutinous. Yeah, there's some bad people, okay, and they do some tough things. So does Saudi Arabia, okay, so does Pakistan. I'm not supporting them, but I do understand them. And everything that's happening goes back to what happened in 1953. And I'll make another statement. Nobody you interview's got the balls to say this. We made the mistake of getting in bed with the Zionists in 1948 to our great expense. And we made the mistake in 1953 of not getting in bed with the Iranians when we should have and we could have. And the Iranians would have been our best friends, and the Israelis are our biggest enemies. Israel is not an ally of the United States. They hate the United States. They have as much respect for the United States as a hooker does for used rubber. They use the United States. They're a bunch of parasites. It's genocide. If you cannot see genocide in Gaza, you are either blind or stupid.
Well, it blows my yeah, I know, I agree with you. It blows my mind, and we don't have to necessarily mention their names, but there are certain people in the alternative media space. Um, Look, I don't expect people to maybe be as vocal as we are per se, but they completely omit this topic. It's like the third rail or whatever the term is, where you just don't talk about it, and that just leads their whole audience astray, and they buy into the whole 5D chess Trump thing. Like I don't get that. Like all of these politicians they're all controlled. It's a cabal.
Okay, who controls 96% of the US media?
I mean, that's a broad question. I would say like the Zionism. Is
Thank
that
you.
is that the question you're looking for? Okay.
Exactly. Okay. What you're hearing is something that has filtered through the Zionist point of view. There was a really interesting comment. I got the original FBI report that came out about the dancing Israelis on 9/11. And there was an interesting comment in there. There was someone working for Urban Moving Systems who was a goy. He was a non-Jew, and he said they hated Americans, and they made it clear they hated Americans. And they said, "We will take control of your media, and in 20 years we will destroy you." Now that's this little shit for brains country in the Middle East of 9 million people threatening the United States. And there is a nuclear armed terrorist state in the Middle East, but it's not Iran, it's Israel. Israel has the Samson option. They're saying if we ever lose the war, what we'll do is we'll blow up everybody around it. You are not dealing with sane people. You're dealing with madmen. You're dealing with sociopaths who don't give a damn about anything but themselves. Now, I sympathize with this woman, okay? If she's being fed the mainstream media, she has been fed stuff that's totally wrong. But there were a lot of Persians, a lot of Iranians who left after the revolution in 1979. And that's absolutely understandable. If you were a supporter of the Shah, they would take you out and kill you. Well, same thing happened in Cuba. The same thing, Napoleon took power, I think, in 1796 or 1797. Napoleon killed more French people than the guillotine did because that's what it took to stop the revolution. So I understand bad things happen to a lot of Iranians, and I don't necessarily feel it should have happened to them. I feel bad that it did happen to them. But the United States created the whole revolution, the Shah, and they put the mullahs in power. And all we had to do is leave them alone and let them determine their own fate. And that's exactly what they would have done. Iran could be and should be the greatest friend in the Middle East to the United States.
Well, who knows? Maybe in 100 years that'll be the case. Yeah, it'll be. Well, I guess it could be kind of like Japan and the U.S. in the 1940s. Yeah, I just think it's yeah, very a very interesting period. And I'm just kind of taking it all in. Another thing I wanted to bring up on, I know we touched on, unless you wanted to continue that thread, is false flags. I hear a lot of people talk about, some type of a 9/11 event or something to occur in the U.S. or abroad to, galvanize people behind support for the war. So that'll be interesting
Well,
if that happens.
okay, let's talk about false flags. 9/11 was false flag, clearly. COVID was a false flag. The Bay, the Gulf of Tonkin incident in August 1964 was a false flag. If there's an assassination, always look for Israel. Israel has assassinated more people than every other country in the world combined. If there is a false flag, look for the United States. The United States thinks false flags are part of military thinking. So we're in a very dangerous situation. Things are going to change faster and potentially more dangerous than anything you can imagine. Absolutely correct. There easily could be false flags. I would be exceptionally surprised of those 10 or 12 or 20 million people that Joe Biden brought in. If there were not some terrorists in there, I would be exceptionally surprised. We got 330 million people in the United States, 400 million guns. It's the easiest country in the world to get a gun. So bad things almost certainly are going to happen, and it's something we have created.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Bob, is there anything else that you'd like to touch on?
I don't think so. I mean, we're not going to do another interview until tomorrow at about 10 in the morning. Then we'll do another one at 3 in the afternoon and another one at 9 tomorrow night. And we can discuss things then.
I like it. I like it. Bob, how can people learn more about you as well as get in touch?
One of the things that I think people should do now, and it just happens to be because I am a very prolific author, they should go to Amazon. And I don't care what your interests are, whether it's in investing, whether it's investing in junior resource stocks, whether you're looking for some light fiction. I have some very funny books and certainly very readable books. And they should go to Amazon and take a look at it. And now let me ask a question while I can. Have you ever interviewed Dave Cullum?
Yes, I actually have him coming on for the third time on April 2nd.
Okay, perfect. When you do that, I worked together with him. He has done a year in review in December every year since 2009. And we were the very first people to ever host his year in review. It's on peak prosperity now, for which I will never forgive him. But I got together with him and I said, look, these year in reviews are really brilliant, but what you should do is put them in paper form so people can read it because they can't sit at a computer for 15 hours reading it. And interestingly enough, for him to correct his year in review, in hindsight, he had to go read the things that he had written 5 years ago and 10 years ago. We did an interview together a few days ago. And he said it was really interesting to me because it brought up all these things that I had commented on 5 years ago and 8 years ago and 10 years ago. And it's really interesting. And what I'm going to say is he has published, I think, 17 books. He gets all of the revenue from the books, and I'm happy to make my contribution to help him. But you can pick up any book in the series, you can open it to any page and start reading, and it's really funny and it's really interesting. And I think that once people are aware of what an incredible job he did from 2009 until now, he's going to sell a lot of books. because he was commenting on events as they happen. We comment on events that happened yesterday. Okay. He commented on events that happened over the period of a year, but absolutely incredible writing, great sense of humor, incredibly intelligent person, and his books are absolutely worth reading.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. He introduced me to some topics that completely blew my mind as it relates to what's going on in the world. And, I'll just say again, it blows my mind how some of these pundits, commentators out there really lead people astray. And I'll just say, I don't purport and I don't have the illusion that everyone I have on or my own thoughts are, super accurate. Everything's perfect. But I would say it's still a far better mental model and understanding of the world than whatever stuff they're spewing out there on the mainstream. So,
Well,
yeah,
there's a lot of disinformation now, and quite bluntly, it has to be deliberate. It couldn't possibly be an accident. So there's truly a lot of bad information. If you're watching something and it looks like AI bullshit, don't watch it. It's not going to waste your time.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Bob, appreciate you making the time. It's always good to hear your thoughts. I'm always learning something new and gives me something to think about. And um, yeah, it's and if I'm over in Europe this summer, I'll pay you a visit.
I'm here.
Very well. Very well. Well, all right. Appreciate you tuning in and watching. If you enjoyed it, if you enjoyed the video, you found value, and I encourage you to like, share, subscribe, /follow. The show is on YouTube and Spotify. Always look forward to your feedback and appreciate you tuning in. Be well and take care.